Killing democracy using taxpayer subsidies. I'm Brian Lilly with Rebel.media. Why, whenever people want to change the electoral system or electoral financing laws, does it always end up enriching the parties? It doesn't do anything to actually help democracy, but it makes the parties stronger. You look at what the federal Liberals are doing in terms of trying to change the electoral system. All of the proposals on the table, all the ones under consideration, take power away from individual voters and put it in the hands of backroom party operatives. And in Ontario, where Kathleen Wynne is intent on changing the fundraising system after being embarrassed over her high-priced cash-for-access fundraisers, they are looking at a similar system that will enrich the parties while killing off democracy. What do I mean? Well, in addition to the $2.71 per vote subsidy that the Ontario Liberals are going to bring in to replace regular fundraising, they're also talking about bringing in a subsidy for individual riding associations. All of this happening against the backdrop of the Ontario Liberals doing a last-minute scramble to dig up as much corporate cash as they can. Let's backtrack a little and remember that last spring, Kathleen Wynne was embarrassed over a series of stories in both the Globe and Mail and the Toronto Red Star showing that her ministers were showing up at fundraisers where people that they were regulating, people that they were doing business with, were paying $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 a head just so they could get a bit of face time with the media. There was even one fundraiser organized by people that were in the middle of buying Hydro One off of the province. And guess who the guests of honor were? Bob Chiarelli, our then energy minister, and Charles Sousa, our finance minister. Well, that embarrassed Wynne. She promised to change it. But rather than just saying, "You don't go to those things. What are you, stupid?" No, she decided that instead of invoking common sense, she would change the rules so that no fundraising by any MPP or candidate was allowable. And she would replace fundraising with a per-vote subsidy, $2.71 for every vote cast. That happened at the federal level, and what it did was enrich party coffers at taxpayers' expense. It made the parties lazy in terms of actually connecting with the people whose votes they wanted. If you want someone's vote, a sure sign of whether they agree with you or not is whether they're willing to cough up $25, $50, or $100. But the party, they didn't like doing that. Just like the federal Liberals, they didn't want to go from just getting big checks from Bay Street banks to asking you and me for $50 a pop. So they brought in this per vote subsidy. But now, in addition to that, the latest amendment is $25,000 for every riding in the province to be divided up according to how the riding voted in the last election. Think about this. Both this and the per vote subsidy are a perversion. Kathleen Wynne's Liberals won a majority in the election in 2014, but right now her popularity is sitting at 14%. If an election were called today, they would be reduced to opposition status because the public is fed up with their incompetence on the hydro file. And yet they would get the majority of the money coming from taxpayers because they got the most votes in the last election. They've been screwing up ever since, but they would still get the most votes. This is a perversion of democracy. This is killing democracy, and it's using taxpayers' dollars to do it. The Liberals benefit from the most from the per vote subsidy and the $25,000 per riding. It's ridiculous. Now, as I said, this is all happening against the backdrop of a last-minute scramble for cash. Don't believe me? Then believe Martin Reg Cohen, who writes in the Toronto Red Star. Yes, remember, the Red Star, the official paper of the Liberal Party in Toronto. And what does he report on them doing? Well, they're getting together to try and raise $1 million in November and $1 million in December from corporate Canada before corporate donations are banned. Tim Murphy, who's been a longtime Liberal bagman, someone who was there for David Peterson when he was Prime Minister and when he was Premier, and Paul Martin when he was Prime Minister, organized a dinner where he handed out binders saying, these are the people that have donated recently in the last 3 years, but they haven't donated the full $10,000 this year. Go and get them. So they're denouncing corporate fundraising on the one hand and practicing it on the other. Just another example of Kathleen Wynne showing that she doesn't really mean it. This is about window dressing, but it's also about using tax dollars to make sure that she and her party are the richest ones heading into the next election in 2018. If you like what you just watched, make sure you click subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll never miss another Rebel video again. And of course, if you really like what you're seeing, well, head on over to the rebel.media and become a member. Join us, join the movement, become a member, and then you can access premium content only available to members.